Go back and tear it down and then build it back up.
Huh?
You know, they were going to refurbish it.
Yeah.
Now they're going to tear it down. I'm tired of we've been dealing with this since 2012. Here we are. So why are you all going backwards?
Well, UK starting here in 5 minutes. I'll make a motion to spend $6 million.
What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, man?
I'm good.
UK plays at 9:30.
Or 9:30, man.
Yeah.
You're right.
They're probably later.
I wonder who's got the first game.
I'm not sure.
I wish we did. I hate the late game.
I did. Did you?
No, I didn't get out there.
Most of it was.
That's what.
But
That's what I was afraid of. I wanted to go though.
well, it was interesting. They just have a display of all their equipment, like the radios.
Ray, you're gonna sit up here, aren't you?
Alvin Light.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I got that email we got from that one company.
Hey, Kelly Moore, nice to meet you.
Oh, that's
We met.
what I had. But I was able to get out there, but they just couldn't get away.
Kelly is.
Yeah.
Bill Brooks not here. David.
Well, thank you so much.
We'll call the meeting to order. We'd like to start on time. I want to say to the city council members that my intent was for all of us to sit down there on the same level. Well, the last time we had a joint meeting, several of the council members were upset that we sat up here. So we arranged the seating so everybody could be on the same level. But, well, it's nice, but that wasn't the intent, was where we, and in fact, the mayor and I talked about us not even sitting with the group. But one of the council members decided that he wanted it to be a different way, so that's the way it is. So we did not intend to be looking down on you.
We look up to you all the time.
Well, I know better than that too. But anyway, the purpose of this meeting was to discuss the 911 center. And we have an interlocal agreement with the city that we would pay half of the cost. And since it's a city project, I'm going to ask the mayor to take over this part of the meeting, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Judge. Let's see, Andrew, we don't have a card, so if you just make a note of council members. We are convened, as we discussed before, we're in a workshop setting, so we don't have to, we will not be making any decisions. This is purely for information. In the original, just a couple of points if I could. First, let me thank the fiscal court and the council for the opportunity to sit here. It's always productive when you do. We probably should make it happen more often, but each body is very busy. So I do appreciate the opportunity to sit with you tonight and have these conversations. Let me also say to the court and council that I deeply regret the headline that you were greeted with this morning in anticipation of this meeting. I deeply regret that headline. And for any role that I played in it, I want to offer my apology. We cannot be at odds with one another if we haven't even discussed a concept. And frankly, the opportunity for the court and the council to meet in special session to me is something that we should celebrate and lift up, not look for the controversy in it. But having said those things, we had promised an opportunity for the court. Oh, all right, thank you. We had promised the court and the council an opportunity to hear directly from our consultants on the radio project. All of your first responders and the city's first responders have had a lot of time with these consultants and with the issues, so their understanding is much more developed than yours. And along that path, the judge and I had an opportunity to be in a number of meetings and see the presentation that you're going to see tonight. So we've been exposed to more information.
but we wanted as quickly as we could to give the court and the council access to the same information. So the consultants are here tonight from TUSA, who have been working with our radio committee, which is made up of the 7 agencies that we jointly dispatch for together. They've been kind of the technical lead on this. Lieutenant Jason Whitaker, who operates our 911 system, has been the lead for the city, but it's been a very collaborative effort in that regard. So right before I turn it over to the TUSA consultants for their explanation and for any questions that the court and the council might have, I just wanted to also give the fiscal court and council a little explanation about the growing agenda that you were all treated to this morning as well. We knew that we were under legal obligation to send out notice for this called meeting between the two bodies. You all were closed that particular day that we had to send the notice out. Andrew caught it so that we could put the agenda, get the agenda to the news graphic and make sure we were legal tonight. In our discussion about preparation of that, what was to be a one-item agenda, Andrew and I talked about how infrequently we get together, and that if there was time tonight, after we complete the radio discussion, we thought it would be appropriate to share with the court some of the newest engineering drawings that have been developed for the Lanes Run Business Park project that has been widely discussed, even though we don't have a formal agreement yet. So we added that to the agenda, simply as an opportunity for us to talk about it. If it's not on the agenda, we're not allowed to talk about it. And then as a third item, we added the concept. We are struggling with a huge issue that if there's time we'll talk about. I have had a chance to talk with Kelly since it's in his district, the issue of the condition of Old Oxford Pike and the number of houses that not only already exist in that corridor, but the 1,500 additional homes that are platted for that corridor. We thought that was appropriate to share our concern with the court, so we put it on the agenda. There are no proposals, there's no conflict, but we are delighted to have the chance to at least talk about those issues with you. So that's why you got a 3-item agenda, and it probably surprised the judge a little bit, but hopefully we've set the stage correctly for what we want to do tonight. So with that, I'll turn around and face the screen and give this microphone back to our radio consultants, and that's what we'll focus on.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dean Hart with TUSA Consulting. Dennis Ward with TUSA Consulting has been here assisting as well. He's off to another project in Hernando, so I'll be the one presenting to you tonight. First and foremost, I want to thank the county and the city officials, government officials, for their trust in us to come in and help you with this project. I want to thank the public safety officials in here and the public service officials of the county too. They've been a pleasure to work with, and we look forward to keep working with you guys. So tonight I want to present the report that we gave the key stakeholders on September 20th, and then at the end we'll have all kinds of good questions, I'm sure. So the agenda tonight, do a little minor introduction of TUSA and what we do. We'll talk about the site visits we did, the user interviews with the public safety and the public service community, conceptual design and what goes into that, and then really what are the next steps of this process. So TUSA is this year has celebrated their 25th anniversary. TUSA is not initials for anything. It's our founder, Nick TUSA, out of Covington, Louisiana. Nick started in the Gulf Shore industry as an engineer out of Tulane. He learned real quick. Those were pretty harsh environments, and he's now applied those into the public safety arena to design radio systems that serve public safety. So we take a lot of that focus and turn it around to public safety. We've been recognized by one of the trade magazines as one of the top public safety consultants, so we're proud of that. So when we come in and start these projects, Typically you got a kickoff meeting, but then we immediately go in and we want to look at your radio sites that you currently have. That was the sites that served the city. That was the sites that served the county. So right now you really are using two different radio systems here in the city and the county. Public safety, typically police and EMS are using the Sadieville Tower, the Lancaster water tank, and the Stamping Ground water tank. That's supplying coverage throughout most of the county, but there's still some areas where police and fire have told us they had shortfalls. We also visited the 911 dispatch center. We went to the emergency management center, which serves as a backup dispatch center as well for the city and the county. We also visited the Next Edge VHF sites, which serve city fire and county fire at Burton Pike and Fire Station 2 and 3. We did the user interviews. This is very important to us because we want to hear from the public safety user what's good, what's bad. We used the vendor show yesterday as a tool to sit there and show them what's new on the horizon, what's new subscriber equipment that these guys are working 24/7. They may not see what the vendors have to offer. So we used that opportunity yesterday so they could see that. But we talked with all the agencies on here. That's pretty well, I won't go through it, but it covers all of your public safety and public service agencies within the city of Georgetown and Scott County. And they give us information. They give us candid feedback of good and bad things. So what did we get out of that? We took the user needs and said we want reliability, we want coverage, we want the radio to be easy to use. All the time you hear public safety officials, I want to push to talk, and I add to it, I want to release to listen. That's really what they want to do in their basic part of the job. Radio systems support other functionality in today's world, and we talk about that, but the primary purpose is push to talk communications between the field and dispatch. To get called out to a site after a 911 call, but also to be able to talk to dispatch in the case of an emergency, and to talk to their other fellow public safety officials. And take that further, they need to talk to their public service officials, so when you've got any type of emergency management going, whether it's snow, windstorms have come through and put debris, those people are also helping out in the county and the city to support public safety. Next one was cost. That's always an important one. And interoperability. So who do they talk to outside their county, but most importantly, how do they talk within the county? We talk about interoperability all the time being a buzzword, but we focus on operability first. You got to be able to talk within the city and the county first, and then you got to be able to communicate with the outside counties around your county, as well as state officials and potentially federal officials. And what you see here, excuse me, is a preliminary design of where we envision the sites going in the county, as well as the 911 center and where the emergency management center is located. So this is just kind of a warm-up to let you see what we envision the system looking like in Scott County and the city of Georgetown. And when you kind of look at this, you see some sites here that are helping in the city of Georgetown, and you see the sites out here that help cover the rest of the county as well to provide for the coverage that we obtained and what we listened to when we heard the users talk to us. Talk about reliability. You'll see, I'll talk a little bit later, but we'll talk about what goes into a design to give reliable communications to public safety. So, in today's world, what's conceptual design basics for the city and the county? P25 is the public safety standard that's done across the US now. Back in the 90s, Motorola built a proprietary technology called SmartNet. Harris, then Ericsson, built a proprietary technology called EDAX. That's what you have today. Those systems are end of life. You're seeing them starting to be replaced across the US. So that's nothing new in Georgetown or Scott County. Within that P25 design, there's really two phases. One is phase one. It says for every channel I got one talk path I can talk. But they added the next one to it called phase two technology, So every one channel of frequency I have, I got 2 talk paths. So effectively, I've doubled my capacity. And so we're looking at that design and that compatibility as the baseline in here in the county. Next thing we look at, we're looking at a 6-site simulcast. In today's world, you got 3 multi-sites. That means every time they go to a different site, they're on a different set of frequencies. And if for some reason some things aren't working, and we discovered that in the process here, they have trouble talking to each other. So we're looking at a simulcast system. That previous page, you've seen all those 6 sites. When one site starts talking, the other 6 sites start talking too. So they talk simultaneously. So if I've got a deputy at the north part of I-75 and I've got one at the south part of I-75, they can still talk to each other. The system's going to allow that. Next thing we look at is reliability, and we looked at a redundant simulcast control point. When you do simulcast, you got to have electronics that time it and make it work, because effectively, when all 6 of those sites are broadcasting on the same frequency, I'm introducing self-interference. So when I put a control point in a simulcast system, I eliminate that self-interference, and all those 6 sites can talk, and it doesn't cause any conflict to the users in the field listening to it. So we looked at not only having a primary one for that, we looked at a redundant control point in that. The next thing is probably, even though it's 4th on the list, portable on the hip coverage. When you look at any public safety official, what's one of the things they're carrying? Besides their gun, or the fireman's carrying their tools, they've got a radio on their hip, or they got a radio on their pocket. That's the baseline design that we start with in a public safety system, is we want a starting point of portable on the hip, on the street. That's the starting point. But as we look at a city environment, or we also ask the public safety officials what's their critical buildings in their county or their city, then we start designing deeper into how do I get in those buildings. So if I'm out in a rural part of county and I go into a wood frame single story or double story house, that's called 6 dB in our technical world. I apply more loss to the radio system so that portable radio will work when I enter that building. You know, and so, you know, you think about this in layman's terms. If I'm inside your house talking to you, I don't have to talk that loud and you'll hear me. But if I walk outside that house, don't I have to yell a little bit louder to get inside that house? So by adding 6 dB into the coverage design, we help to overcome that. So you start taking that to the next step. I got strip malls, I got Walmarts, I got Toyota plants, I got government buildings, I've got schools, I've got hospitals. Those start taking it up into the 20 dB or higher criteria. So we add that criteria in it as well. So a police officer or fireman not only can talk when they're outside the building, they can talk when they go inside the building. So we take those into consideration, and that's what drives the design of those 6 sites that we recommend as the starting point for Scott County and Georgetown. We also set a criteria on that. So we say 97% of the time with reliability, they should be able to talk throughout the county. So the first thing, police and fire look at that and say, well, that means 3% of the time I may not talk. So we add another piece to that in the specification that says, we don't want any contiguous portions in the county that you can't talk. So maybe some of that 97% is off in the forest in a rural area, and maybe some of it's, you know, in other places. But we sit there and say, hey, you can't go down I-75 and have a bunch of grids that don't talk. You got to be able to communicate in that. So we add an extra criteria in that beyond what you see on that 97%. And when that specification goes out and a vendor builds that system, it's tested to that. So they'll break the county into grids. They'll break the city into even more grids. They'll go into those grids and they'll test them, and the system has to pass to that criteria. Another public safety standard that's done by some of the boards throughout the U.S. is it's called DAQ, or Deliverable Audio Quality. And 4 is the best. 3.4 is considered public safety grade, so we also test it to that level. Another key piece is what we call public safety grade site connectivity. It's all those lines in between the sites. That's microwave. That's not landline T1s or landline Ethernet or any of that, because we found too many times ice storms come through, stuff goes bad, backhoes out there digging up, putting in new streets, they dig up the fiber. So we put all that on the towers, and we also put an 8-hour battery backup behind that. So if I've lost power and for some reason my generator don't start, and Murphy's Law usually kicks in at some of those points, I got 8 hours to sit there and respond to get my site back online. But the radio system's still working. So public safety's still out there working. The support team behind the scenes is making sure the radio sites stay online, and all that's built into that reliability factor that I talked about. We also looked at owning or sharing a P25 switch. A switcher, or what you'll hear as a core in today's world, it's your computer that's sitting there operating the system. It's the smarts of the system. Telephone systems have it, your computer systems have it. A radio system is really a computer system in today's world that has that. So we look at that as the county owning it, but we also looked at the county as sharing that. So is there other counties or cities in the region that have already this core in place? Well, the University in Kentucky has it, so we looked at that. So I'll show you here in a little bit what you see as the difference in cost. You don't have to buy that resource. Obviously, that's a cost savings. So we look at that. We give you the pros and cons of that, and then it effectively becomes your decision of how you want to continue to operate or have some method of understanding with another government agency of sharing technology. We also looked at the backup dispatch center. 911 officials told us that when they go to backup, and it's rare, but it happens, it's a whole different set of radios or telephones, and they probably spend the first part of their moment trying to figure out how all that works. So we're looking at a duplicate of your 911 center and another, and also those same resources at your emergency management backup center. So in some cases, dispatch can also continue to operate how they operate today, but if they go to emergency management and provide that resource for something going on in the county, they got the same equipment, they just come in there and support the operation or the critical incident, and they continue to do what they know what to do. We also looked at regional interoperability as defined by users. So Fayette County, below Scott County, is a P25 user. A lot of your counties around you are VHF NextEdge users. We took all that into consideration, and we'll take that into consideration as we put out a specification. Then we also looked at the fire alerting system for the city fire, what they currently had and how that would interface with the new system. So we really considered two design options in this. We looked at city and the county are on their own, they got their own system infrastructure, they got their own core, and then we looked at the city-county system infrastructure with a shared switch or core. So this map looks pretty busy. You see the city limits of Georgetown, you see the county limits of Scott, and you see the sites where we believe radio coverage would provide the best. Red stands for 20 dB buildings. We not only focused on 20 dB buildings in here, but we kind of focused out to here because we've heard from the public safety users, and we've heard from other people within the county. The county's growing, so I don't want to just sit there and build what you got today. I want to build at least with a 5 to 10 to 15 year plan ahead of time for growth in the county, so you don't come up and later on and say, well, we had coverage out here till you built all this new industry, and now we don't have coverage anymore. So you've seen us focus 20 dB inside Georgetown and around Georgetown. We focused it up along I-75 pretty well through the county. And so when you start seeing orange and yellow, this is 6 dB buildings, and the yellow that's kind of in the background there is portable on the street. So you look in here and you see some holes, and that don't mean that the radio's not talking there, it just means it's not meeting some of the criteria that I just talked about. So it may have mobile coverage, it could have portable on the street. So there was the design that we came into. You see the different lines going around between the sites. That's tying your dispatch centers and emergency management into the radio sites. So that's microwave that would go in as part of the design. So conceptually, this is what we would write a specification to, and this is what we would anticipate coverage and what your system would look like in the future. So that's option one, county and the city owning it all. 6-site RF simulcast system, 10 channels. It's got a redundant switch and core for reliability. It's also got a redundant control point for the simulcast that I talked about earlier. It can handle phase 1 and phase 2 P25. It's got a microwave ring connectivity. That means if for some reason the microwave goes out on one of those towers, the technology, microwave for some reason went bad here, the technology's smart enough it'll turn around and reroute it this way. So there's another level of redundancy in the network. Got effectively 2 dispatch centers, 911 and emergency management for backup. Each would have 4 consoles. From a subscriber standpoint, and this is broke out in the detailed report, but total there's 268 mobiles throughout the county, public safety, public service, 328 portables, public safety, public service, and 19 control stations. Estimated cost about $12.3 million. And we give we go into intimate details in that in the report. I don't want to get into that here. There's your bottom line for the city and the county to own their own system. What's the pros of that? Can easily do that under competitive procurement. You know, I've negotiated about 4 or 5 deals this year, and it's very good to watch the vendors compete against each other. And trust me, in today's world, in the radio world today, in my mind, is a good time to buy a radio system because the vendors are highly competitive for that market share. So that in itself is looking to save you guys money. You've got your own primary and backup dispatch center. We're going to improve your coverage countywide. That's the pros. Only cons really of this is it's yours. You're responsible for all of it. There's no shared cost in it. City and the county own it. So we look at option 2 here, and you probably say to yourself, you know what, that don't look a whole lot different than what you just showed me. The only real difference is we take a microwave path down here to the University of Kentucky that currently has a P25 core, and that's a shared resource that you could do. That's your decision to make. We would still encourage a competitive procurement on that, and just say, you know, hey vendors, you still got to provide this for the county and the city, and we want to know what this option is in here and what would be the cost savings and the benefit of that. So that in today is a Harris radio system in University of Kentucky. Doesn't mean if Motorola comes in here and does a better job and wins your trust and wins your RFP, you can still put in that microwave hop and talk to the University of Kentucky. P25 is an open standard. The radio systems don't care. They now can be networked together through what's called ISSI, or inter-subsystem interface, and you would still have interoperability, and you would still be able to sit there and do some type of intergovernmental agreement with them if you chose to do so. So it really wouldn't change the ability for EMS to transport down there. You're just doing it a little bit different. So most of this stays the same, except 2 primary things. I'm now sharing a core, and I'm going to share in maintenance of that core. So that core costs money to put in new software to keep current, costs money to maintain, but you see you got about a $600,000 difference from what I showed you before. That's effectively that core would be eliminated, and you would be able to sit there and save about $600,000, probably 6 to 8. It'd be closer to the right number, but you're saving that cost and in that shared infrastructure. So that's really the only true differences. The primary thing I would like for you guys to focus on, though, is we did not change the core infrastructure within the city or the county. You still need those sites to provide that coverage that the public safety officials told us about. That doesn't change. Coverage is king. You're buying coverage. All the tower sites and the battery plants and the microwave, that's all supporting to that coverage. But it provides reliability to a public safety grade.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Under this system, earlier you told us that if we lost a tower, that it would reroute back through the other way. You've only got one connection to your shared core in this. If you lost that southern tower, does that lose the connection to that core?
It would lose the connection, yes, sir.
So you would not have any redundancy?
So what we look at in those instances is potentially fiber as a backup, or if this region expands and this county starts building sites through here, maybe I come to here to give a redundancy if I need that for future.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
And I may be wrong, but I understood if we went with UK, that we could only use Harris, so there would be no competitive bidding. I don't know if that's right or wrong.
That's a fair statement, Judge, but I would still encourage you to look at your county and take care of it first, and have that as an option in your RFP, and then see what that cost difference is and how competitive the vendors want to be.
Bid it both ways is what you're saying?
Yes.
We met with Chief Monroe of the UK Police Department. We invited him over to talk about where their tower is and how it might add to our map. They actually said if we did a shared core with them, they would have a core in Scott County over which we would have full administrative control. So I'm not sure that concern would still exist if we did the shared. I'm not recommending that. We don't have the information yet, but the UK chief indicated that we would have that.
So there is other technology options. So in that shared core that you just talked about, Mayor, and you've seen in the option one, I had a primary and a redundant core. So in that scenario that you just described, primary core sits down here, redundant core sits up here. This connectivity gets lost. They continue to operate their way, you continue to operate your way. You've just lost that seamless roaming and that interconnectivity till that microwave link is fixed.
Again, one of the pros and cons that we can weigh along with potential cost savings.
That's true, yes, sir. So similar here, you know, the pros is it's similar to option one for the users and coverage. There is a reduced cost, and now you have shared maintenance cost on that switch in the core. The true con, and that's what I talk about, is, and Harris is cringing right now, we don't want a sole source procurement. That takes away from the competitive advantage of letting E.F. Johnson, letting Harris, and letting Motorola come in here and provide a great system and provide the options at a better price. So too many times I see in the non-competitive world, a price kicks up about 20 to 30 points when that non-competitive is there. So I highly encourage you not to do that. You may still be able to achieve what you want to do, but do it under competitive procurement. The next critical piece of this, we don't buy a car or truck and not change the oil or the tires on it. So we don't look at spending $12 million for a radio system and not taking care of it. So one of the things that we do in our phase one is we let you know what those maintenance and life cycle options are in a radio network. And so the technology is about 15 years. So when you put those base stations and those consoles and all those in the microwave, typical life cycle of those is about 15 years. If you build new towers, if you build new shelters, put in generators, don't view that any different than putting in new roads or sewers for a new subdivision. You've built 50-year infrastructure at that point. So you're going to look at the cost and say, oh my God, but consider you've made a 50-year investment in your infrastructure in the county to support your public safety systems. 3 years, you look at 15 years of technology then, you're gonna look at least three different technologies come through that infrastructure that you've built for your city and for your county. So we look at maintenance for your infrastructure and dispatch, preventative maintenance for your infrastructure and dispatch. We look at taking care of your subscribers, your mobiles and your portables, microwave maintenance, got air conditioners running these sites, got generators for backup, got UPS or DC battery systems, got a logging recorder for dispatch, and these systems are all IP based now, so you've got software involved in them. We look at our desktop or our laptop, what do we look, 3 to 5 years? This is looking at about 7 to 8 years of that technology life cycle. And in this refresh, it looks at about year 7 or 8 to support that. And so then we look at the end of 15 years, all of the IP network is still current. So if my base stations or some technologies changed, we hear about FirstNet or other things out there, and put new RF, new base stations on the end of that, but I still got a refreshed technology from an IP connectivity standpoint that I haven't wasted that investment by doing this across the board. So again, what's the cost of that? From things we've seen, you're probably looking at about, and this is years 2 to 15, you get a 1-year warranty as you build a system. We've seen in some competitive environments, the vendors are offering more than a 1-year warranty because they want the business that bad. So, but with the 1-year warranty and looking at years 2 through 15, you're looking at about 4.6 million. I don't do the math right across my head, but I think that's about 300,000 or 400,000 a year, I think is what that comes out to. 487. Thank you, sir. But that is taking care of your system turnkey. That's taking care of all of it. So when we do a competitive bid, we also we competitively bid this as well. So when you get that RFP back and we come back and report to you what the vendors have offered, we're going to be able to sit there and show you, here's what the radio system is going to cost you to build, and here's what it's going to cost to take care of it through its life cycle. So you got a 15-year view. The beauty of some of that is in the RFP environment, it allows you to negotiate those costs now. So in year 15, you're paying a little bit more based on some cost of living, but a lot of it's based on what we do today. So it's setting in those fixed maintenance costs for the life cycle. And the competitive environment helps drive that. So what are our next steps? Approve the conceptual design. I believe you've done that, but you'll tell me if you haven't. Create the RFP specification. We're getting ready to work on that, and we're looking at a January release for that. Publish that RFP to the vendors for competitive procurement. Review and evaluate the vendor proposals and contract negotiations, and then implementation. So when I look from here to about right here, that's a 6-month process to make that happen. With the amount of work that's got to be done, this is probably about an 18-month to 2-year process to build those sites. It's not that it can't be done quicker. That all comes down to how long do you want to maintain your current radio system and the cost of that. That may help drive that implementation to a faster implementation cycle. I don't view that costing you anymore. I just view it getting done quicker is what I view. So we'll need to talk about that as we work through all these processes. Yes, sir.
Does your costs include land acquisition and right-of-way issues?
No, sir. That does not.
One thing, if you could help the court and the council, either through your words or some of the radio committee folks. The first thing the court and the council, I think, have to understand or have to conclude is that this is necessary, and that it's necessary right now. And we
the committee in August of last year. We met, and the first thing I wanted to try to clarify through all the entities for public service and public safety was, what are our main goals? And our main goal was reliability, coverage, and to keep our responders safe. So the main goal after that was to keep everybody informed, keep everybody on board, and stay focused on what the goals are. We've met a lot. We usually meet about once or twice a month, and throughout this process, you know, our current radio system is, you know, it's bad. As the 911 director, I continuously hear from our first responders that they can't get out in certain locations just in town. For instance, we had an officer-involved shooting, and the officer was talking on the radio, and the officer across the street, literally across the street, could not hear him or her. So then we also had another incident in the county where there was a vehicle pursuit, which led into an officer-involved shooting. And that audio, which I let the mayor and the judge listen to when I presented this to them, was the whole entire time, and was out on the western part of the county, and which is not very far outside the city limits or anywhere near. I mean, it's not very far from Stamping Ground, where our closest tower would have hit off of, and those first responders couldn't even talk to each other because even on their mobiles. And it was, I mean, if you would listen to it, and if y'all want to have the opportunity to listen to that audio, I'll provide it for you. But it's bad, and I continuously, like I said, I continue to get those complaints and those issues, and I promise you, I'm doing my due diligence to make sure our officers and our first responders are safe out there, and when I'm doing what I can do. So for what we got. So if anybody else wants to add, Chief.
Lieutenant, what's it costing you now to maintain this system, to keep it up?
Right now, we're actually going through the process. So we had last month, we actually had AMK Harris to come in and do a tower sweep of all of our towers, and I've yet to get a report back from them on that. So they were waiting on some extra testing, and I'm waiting on the report to see what it's going to take just to make our system reliable enough until we push forward further with this project. So we're just basically trying to make it work, just to get us to the next couple of years, hopefully, if we get this project approved. So, yes, sir.
This may be a question for him, I don't know, but if we spend all this money and do all this, and a year from now we have the same issues we're having now, what happens?
Well, I have to openly say some of the issues you have now are because of deferred maintenance. The maintenance that you see me put up there is, quite frankly, not something you're doing today. So that's why I say.
So is there any guarantee if we do the maintenance that we're guaranteed some of our money back, or I'm just asking, what is there a warranty of any kind, or?
Well, when you build a new infrastructure, you've got a 1-year warranty from the manufacturers on the whole system.
Okay.
And then from then on, you go into what's called post-warranty maintenance, and you do this levels of service at about $480,000 a year to sit there and keep your system maintained to public safety grade, and to keep the IP portion of it and all the software portions of it up to the latest revisions that the manufacturers are supporting. That's not done today, so I'll be the bearer of bad news.
So that, excuse me, that first year, if we run into those issues, that warranty would cover our cost, or is that something you know?
Well, it's going to be fixed because it's under warranty.
Okay.
And
so it's guaranteed to work?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then by continuing the post-warranty maintenance, you're really still putting that same guarantee in there that your system is being maintained and upgraded and taken care of through its life cycle. And that's more than just the radio piece of it. That's all the supporting piece of it. So the HVAC, generators, towers, UPS batteries. So the radio part's the easy part. You gotta put in all the other supporting infrastructure to take care of it.
Would that maintenance be done with a contract with the vendors, or how is that? I mean, who's responsible for make sure that's done on schedule?
Yes, sir. There's multiple ways to do that. This can be managed through the county and city processes, or you can say, hey, Mr. Vendor, you take care of all this for me, and you take care of all these services. So what do they do in that case? They go to a local HVAC provider and they do a subcontract based on your requirements, and they'll mark it up to take care of that. That's the way the vendors handle it. Same way with the generators or UPS. So there's probably a hybrid in here somewhere where you do some of that, and the vendor takes care of the infrastructure, the electronic portion of it. There's a hybrid, there's a happy medium in there that can help reduce some of those overall costs. Yes, sir.
Can you address what I discussed with you last night as far as in terms of mutual aid agreements and communications with outside counties? So right now, if there's a fire in Zion Hill, the Woodford County Fire Department is going to respond first. If there's a pursuit from a city police officer and they go into Bourbon County, then what is communication, is this designed, and what's the communication going to be like with surrounding counties as well as state organizations?
So we will take all that into consideration into the specification, and we will look at the radio systems that the counties use, and we'll put control stations that allow your dispatch and your officers to be able to be patched and go into those surrounding communities. Same way with fire service. A lot of the surrounding counties are on Next Edge radio systems, put in control stations that would allow them to extend into that and be able to get back to dispatch and provide that level of interoperability. State's no different. We'll look at what the state uses, put the control stations in on the network, so they have the ability then to tie into the state network, or the state network tie into you if some event happens and they've got to support it.
When you do that, is it a situation of where that is additional cost on top of what you've already estimated?
No, it's built into that. Yes, sir.
Just got to have agreements with those agencies.
That's it. That's your challenge, is to come up with those mutual aid or intergovernmental agreements, and to set policy of how you're going to operate when you support each other, whether them coming into your county or you going outside your county and supporting them.
To your earlier question, what we learned a little bit about this radio system. Apparently we bought it 19 years ago, used.
Mm-hmm.
And put it in place, and apparently back then we began operating it before it was completely installed. And then we've gotten by putting Band-Aids on what was a poor situation to begin with, until we worked our way to the end of the life cycle of the equipment, and being able to get the radios fixed and equipment to keep working. We think if we're given the opportunity to do a fresh rebuild with modern technology, and then maintain it and anticipate the maintenance for 15 years, then we've got a really program that will give us that useful life. Right now, I think Wayne's right. We don't have an accurate cost of what we should have been paying to maintain the system, because frankly, we haven't done it very well.
And to that, I can say I was the police chief back then when we got that system. And economically, Georgetown is not, Scott County and Georgetown is not in the same situation as we are now. So, that's apples and oranges. We got the best system at the time that we could afford. And we're in a much better situation now, and I'm thankful for that.
The worst part about the whole situation is that the county and city is liable for not having the right numbers for these firemen, these police officers and stuff out in the county. And there's a liability there that's on our back that we're not even looking at right now. Or we might be looking at it, but we're just not facing it.
Well, when you look at the whole situation, and I told some of the people yesterday, the vendors, I was a police officer for 32 years. The bottom line is we need a system. That's why we're all here. You look at prices. What's the price of his life, her life, any other emergency services life? We cannot put a price tag on it. We've got to come together like we are. I'm going to ask them from my standpoint, and others may have different point of views. I'm going to ask you, what do you need? What's going to work best for you? And that's what I want to hear. You know, I can't put a price tag on your life. I just can't do it.
I think too, you need to give people the tools to do their job.
You got to have.
You can't, you know, I mean, you can't give somebody a job to do and not give them the proper tools. And with technology changing and growing, if we don't get ahead of it now, we're behind.
Better believe it.
But the judge and I met with the radio group, all our agencies and our consultants, and they showed us the report, and our response was, before we go further with the fiscal court or the city council, we want the radio group to go back and talk about this, take this report and mull it over, and tell us, is this what you want? And they did that. And they signed off on this concept. I think if they had their druthers, they'd rather us own the core rather than share the core. But as long as we make sure that we have all the operability, that's what these folks are going to have. So we got that answer, and that's when we were willing to go to the next phase with the core. The other cost that is involved with this, it's a harrowing few minutes, but if you have a chance to listen to this audio that Jason has, it will scare you to death. And the person that I feel for is not only the officers that were out there not able to talk to each other, it was the dispatcher absolutely going crazy because they couldn't talk to the officer and get them connected to each other. I can't imagine the stress of dispatch.
They may be here, I think. I think they all need to hear that makes it real. Not just in the abstract.
Dean, last week at the CAECO conference, Kelly and I heard a presentation from AT&T about I think you mentioned the FirstNet system that they're building. How far out is that system from being online? How does it impact this? Are they interrelated at all? Or?
Yes. FirstNet is probably the next generation of technology that public safety will see. FirstNet today, even though they act like it's the solution for everything, its first rollout is to support data. So it's to support mobile data in the vehicles, and it's supposed to give priority to public safety, that if I got an accident and everybody's on the cell phone, I haven't locked up all my cell systems, that they can still get through. The secondary piece of it is to put push to talk. So they can take the cell phone and, you know, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, you're gonna see that where somebody's got a ruggedized cell phone or iPad or something, that's the device. But that's not there today. And some of the things that happen in the land mobile radio, which is this, have other features that give police the ability to talk radio to radio, give fire the ability to talk radio to radio. Those have not been put into FirstNet yet. So what you're seeing is vendors starting to come up with new technologies. Motorola calls it Wave, Harris calls it Beyond, and it takes a P25 network out to a cell phone through the cellular infrastructure. So you're starting to see the convergence happen through the vendors. But you also sit there and see Motorola and Harris have to the late 30s and the early 40s of their life cycle maps of supporting P25. And E.F. Johnson's similar. They've got that life cycle all the way out into the 30s to support P25. So, will I see it in my lifetime? Maybe. I still think it's a far way out there. P25 started in public safety in the early 90s, and it's taken it about 20 years to gain its trust and get public safety converted over to it to replace the proprietary systems like you have today. But you're starting to see that, I'll call it convergence to that. But we're not there yet, sir.
Even as the infrastructure, like as far as the where you had the towers and the map with the towers, is there going to require additional towers to be built for connectivity and communication? If, for example, you're out on Burgess Smith Road or you're on Leaning Oak Road, you know, to address some of those gap areas, is there going to be requirement for new towers to be built? And then, you know, what's that process?
So the infrastructure you see here, we looked at reusing your US 460 water tank and your stamping ground water tank. Those provide good tower facilities. You need new shelters there, you need new generators, you need the new supporting infrastructure, but those water tanks could support that. We looked at the Burton Pike. Current tower there is older, it needs replaced. The shelter's not been maintained, got grounding issues. So we would put we've got land space to be able to put a new tower there. We also put in, you see here, American Tower, they're a tower owner. Crown Castle's a tower owner. They lease out to the cellular companies today. When we look at doing a specification, we ask the vendors, look at that and make sure it's going to meet the coverage requirements that we've asked for the city and the county, but also make sure you can get on that tower and what's that cost. So when a response comes back, if American Tower, Crown Castle's wanting to make their millions off of Scott County, we look at that, and if that cost is too high, we come back and say, hey city, hey county, it's cheaper to build a tower, and you've now got vertical real estate that you can share with other cellular providers or other Wi-Fi or broadband internet providers. That's your space now, that's your vertical space, and here's the business case to justify that.
And in your proposal of what's the estimated cost, that number's not included. I think Andrew asked that question, correct?
Yeah, I've put some cost in here, what these lease costs would be.
Not
that's
like
operational cost though.
Land acquisition and building towers, construction, you didn't include that?
Yeah, I did, yes, sir.
Okay, so that 12 million would include part of that.
Yes.
The second question is if there was broadband internet put on those towers from a private provider, is that going to be interfering with the signals that go out to our emergency responders?
So in the engineering world, we do our due diligence and we ask, what is that? What frequencies it's going to be? Where do they want to be on your towers? And then there's mathematics behind the scene to say yay or nay. It's called an intermod study or an interference study. So you want to do your due diligence of letting some carrier be on your tower, but most of the time we don't see any issues with that.
So is the system that you designed that allows for that? If a private broadband company wants to put a satellite on there and either the county or city or together wants to lease space to them, that's not going to mess with the system that you designed?
You got to get the information from them and do your due diligence.
So Mayor,
but typically it does not.
I'll ask you, is that going to be in the design part of it?
We from the get-go, Chad, had thought at any location where a new tower was required, that it could potentially be a revenue source.
Okay.
Either from cellular companies or our own ability to offer better broadband service to our citizens. And we hope we can get some benefit from that, although the reality is that these towers are going to go in fairly isolated areas. That's the purpose. And it may take a while for us to see the demand for our towers. Okay. But we do think, since it's a 50-year asset, that there's potential there.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sir, one of the things we do in a tower spec in the specification that we put out is we say it's got to handle what it takes for the county, but add a 50% growth factor to that. So then that gives you the ability to partner with these other people and hang more antennas off of these towers that you build and look at recuperating some funds on your investment.
Couple questions. First, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being just absolutely worst case scenario, where are we at with the current radio system? Where would that fall in place?
Well, if I'm hearing it right, 1 being terrible, 10 being good.
10, oh, yeah, well, flip it around. 1 being good, 10 being terrible.
Well, I'll give you about 9 then. If it was flipped, it'd be a 2, so.
Okay, so.
You guys need to pay attention to some of the stuff you got now and keep that radio system going before this one's built.
If we do nothing at all, and all we continue to do is put Band-Aids on the system, how much longer is it gonna be before it becomes a 10? If it's already a 9, when is it?
It's pretty close. You've got some quotes from your AMK dealer right now. You need to get those done. You need to get them done. And then at that point, you may move it back to about a 5.
Mark, if I may comment, the incident that Lieutenant referred to out on the west end of the county, I was a part of that. I had actually just arrived home, heard the call, knew that this was a domestic violence perpetrator, knew he was armed with a gun, and on what we call 148 use of drugs. I knew this wasn't going to end well, so I left the house and went and got involved in this. Being a part of that day, I'll tell you it's a 10 at that moment. You can't communicate with your deputies and say, please, I don't know if we had any PD guys out there or not, but you hear shots fired and breaking up in the radio, and it's a 10 with that. So.
Excuse me. The reason that we're at a 9 right now is because Toyota donated their entire system to us 2 years ago, which put more portable radios in, gave us spare parts for the repeaters, gave us a whole lot of resources that we weren't going to have. If we didn't have that influx of spare parts from an end-of-life system, we would be at the 10 already.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm absolutely convinced that we need this system. What I was going to ask you is, have you done a cost analysis on the difference between the system in the city and covering the county?
That's not in the scope of work we normally do, sir. So if that's something that this whole body chooses to do, we can examine that, and we can give you examples of around the U.S. of what people do.
Do you normally do cost sharing analysis?
Not on the infrastructure. We do on the maintenance.
So you don't perform that for clients?
No, sir. That's not in our typical scope of work.
Was that a discussion had in the talks with procurement and the contract?
No, sir. But it's not something that's typically done. That really comes down to, we'll give you the bottom line design and price, and we hope it's worked out in the government body of however that's decided.
That's not quite what you told me yesterday, but I'll go on from there. How many towers would it take to service the city of Georgetown?
I believe you need at least these 3 at a minimum to take care of Georgetown.
So then there's 3 towers that are in the county that we would need to service the city of Georgetown.
No, those are to take care of the rest of the county.
Right, but we wouldn't need those for the city of Georgetown.
No, sir.
They wouldn't be connected anyway in that microwave or something?
They're connected, but I think what this gentleman's referring to is, if I was only building a radio system for Georgetown, instead of this coming around this way, this would come down this way, then I would only have 3 towers to serve the city of Georgetown.
Yeah, and to this point, it has been the recommendation of the judge and myself that we approach this as an equal funding between city and county. The reality is that our Georgetown citizens travel all through Scott County, and Scott County citizens travel all through Georgetown, and frankly, we just can't build a wall around Georgetown. We operate a 911 system that goes countywide, and we'll be glad to have that conversation at the council level. I'm not sure if you want to have that conversation. Trust me, I'm happy to have any conversation. But can we get a cost sharing analysis done? Pardon? Can we get a cost sharing analysis done? Only if the council decides they don't want to do a 50-50 proposition. And as I said, we will discuss that in the council meeting. You will have one vote, and you will be allowed to exercise that vote. And if the council as a whole decides to change that funding proposal, we'll come back and talk about it. But otherwise, it's not appropriate for this gentleman to answer our public financing questions. We'll talk
talking to him yesterday, he offered me that they do cost sharing analysis.
That is not part of our scope.
If they're asked to do that.
We have not asked them to do that. Nor will we do so unless the council as a whole elects to reject the 50/50 funding.
Well, you committed the city to 50/50 funding without having the numbers.
I'm sorry?
You committed the city to the 50/50 funding without having the numbers to make that commitment.
Mayor, one thing, Mayor, we've got an interlocal agreement with the radios, with 911. And it's in the interlocal agreement. If the city council wants to change the interlocal agreement, there's a process to do it. But we do have an agreement in the interlocal agreement. It's not something we made up.
And I think that covers everything that we need to run that agreement.
Well, you got an interlocal agreement about funding.
Right.
So if you want to change the interlocal agreement, either side, either party can, by the system, by the way the interlocal agreement can change it. But it is in the interlocal agreement.
And again, we'll be happy to have that conversation across the street. That bring council in. If the council's wishes change, we'll be back on.
I'd like to sit here and watch it now.
We've got a follow-up question. I think Kelly asked the question earlier.
Yes, sir.
If we move forward, if we decide to move forward, or I should say when, if or when, with the new system, obviously I realize that there's a warranty. I think that's the question that was asked that first year. But for the remainder, as long as we're doing, for the remainder of that, I guess up to the 15th year, as long as we're doing the regular maintenance, the issue that the sheriff mentioned earlier about, you mentioned it also, but the police officer that basically was out there on his own, I guess, making a long story short. Does that absolutely take care of that type of situation where that issue should not occur?
Absolutely it
Year 2
does.
through 15, no matter if it's on the west end of the county, the north end of the county,
Absolutely.
east end, anywhere in between.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So, you know, I'll use an analogy. If I buy a new Ford truck and I want a 10-year warranty on it, can't not change the oil during that 10-year period and then still expect a warranty when the engine blew in 9 years. But I can have an expectation to hold the vendor accountable in this, because I've been paying them to take care of the radio system.
As long as we're doing that maintenance, year 2, after that warranty ends, year 2 through year 15. Somewhere down the road, whether it's this council or this court or future council and future court, and we have that same type issue occur, what kind of recourse do we have at that point in time?
Say that again, please.
What happens year 2 through 15, as long as we're performing the regular maintenance? We being the city and the county. What happens if we have an issue where there's a dead spot, where there's no connection? What recourse do we have with the vendor?
So, one of the things that we talked about early was we're gonna build and we're gonna test to these designs. So, I'm gonna use an example. We built the radio system and everything tested good to the contract and everything's good. And somewhere year 5, sheriff comes back and says, hey, I can't talk here, but I could talk yesterday. I've got a maintenance plan. The vendor's supposed to have been taking care of that radio system through that contract. Something's wrong. So they've got to come in and figure out what's wrong and fix it. That really is your guarantee. Your guarantee is that when this is tested in year 15, it should still test the same. Nothing should change. Now, if growth's happened in your county and maybe you built a new Toyota plant different from your other one, okay, you kind of changed the parameters a little bit and things got to be looked at. And a lot of cities and counties now look at putting that into their building codes that, hey, I require a new building to put in fire sprinklers. Why don't I require a new building to put in some RF sprinklers that public safety can still talk in that new building when it's built in your municipality or your county. So those are other things that you can do as a governing body to help as growth happens within your city or your county to ensure public safety can still talk in those buildings. Maintenance is your guarantee that your radio system's being taken care of by a vendor and that it's gonna still be working the same in year 15 as it did the day you accepted it.
Well,
I hope that answers your question. Yes, sir.
Just a comment on all that's been talked about. Really, if years 2 to 15, if we have this maintenance plan in process, they will provide everything that they fix. It's warranted again.
That's correct. You got a post-warranty maintenance at that point. Yes, sir.
I mean,
and you're
yeah,
paying for
so
that.
if they, in year 3, they have to replace a major component of something, I don't know, make one up. When they do that, then that component is now under warranty probably for another year. And all of that can be written in the RFP.
Absolutely.
Because warranties nowadays are written that way in the construction industry that I'm in. They are longer warranties now. Sometimes up to 5 years on some of the parts and some of the fixtures and things that we supply in our industry. Some of the warranties run out to 5 years.
But, sir, I can tell you, I negotiated a contract for Miami Beach earlier this year. I've been doing this for 30 years. It was the first time I've seen a vendor step up and offer a 5-year full warranty on the subscribers and the maintenance. So we got 3 vendors in this room. I'm giving you a little insight of, you know, starting to see that now out in the industry. That brings a whole lot of value to a potential customer.
Well, you're going to get what you pay for. And obviously, a 5-year warranty as opposed to a 1-year warranty, there's going to be a cost increase. But it will probably be a better savings than if we went with a 1-year warranty and then counting on this 2 to 15 maintenance program. There's probably going to be a cost savings. But again, all of that's written up in the RFP.
Yes, sir.
You do that on the front end and let them compete.
And we do.
Right.
And that's why I'll keep saying competitive procurement.
But the bottom, I guess what I'm trying to say, and I'll be quiet, the concept is, if with this maintenance plan, we're gonna have, it'll be a warranty of some sort, years 2 to 15, going, depending on what your original warranty is.
That's correct.
Say it's a 3-year warranty, is in the RFP, and that's what we get. So from 4 to 15, we'll have a maintenance program, but still a warranty's involved with that, right?
It would, exactly. So it'd be like having a 3-year warranty on your new pickup and you buy an extended warranty at year 4 through whenever it carries through. Yes, sir.
Could you go back to the timing, the diagram you had that told the timetable, expected the timetable to get this done? And the reason I'm asking, we're about 13 months, just over 13 months from having a new court and a new council. And I guess this would be for Fran, if we initiate the contract to start this, I mean, it's gonna push into the next court, obviously.
They'll be bound by it if you enter that contract.
So we plan on starting and having this released around the middle of January. And so you're probably looking at about May here that this would be done. And we would be coming back to you and explaining, hey guys, here's what we presented, here's what we got, here's the bottom line cost, and then you guys gotta make the tough decisions, so.
What would happen, Alvin? The court would make the budget for the next year, starting January. And it would be up to this court to put the money in the budget for it, which would happen. If it went over, it would be in the budget. And if they finished, one thing you can't do for new courts, you can only spend 60% of your money by December, of your total budget. You understand that, yeah. But it would be, if the court agrees to do it, which I don't think there's any question we're going to do it, the money for it would be put in the budget.
How about the other thing we ask, separately, Judge and I went to the vendor day yesterday, and our TUSA consultants took us to each of the vendors that were present so that we could have a one-on-one conversation, and the same one-on-one conversation with each of the vendors there. And what we talked about, I'm pretty sure the conversations were similar questions. We wanted to know what each vendor, we wanted to make sure that each vendor had their own in-company finance options or lease options. We know we want to move forward with the project. We know that we have, each unit of government has some cash. We have the ability to borrow, or we have vendor provided programs. And we would like in the RFP process for us to learn about all the vendor programs so that then the council can make their decision on how to weave together their part of this investment. And then the court would have the same information to decide how you want to do yours. It sounds like that we could consider this in two different budget years.
Well, my thinking on it would be whatever the cost is. And then depending on what the council does about the interlocal agreement, we would, my recommendation, we would fund it up front. If there was any money left over for the city, they may come back and say the county's gonna pay 90% of the cost. I don't know what they're gonna say. I don't think so. But whatever, we would be in a position to budget for our part of it without bonding it. And then, but the mayor's right. There's lease, there's the bonding, they finance it for 5 years at no interest. That's what every one that we talked to. So there's multiple ways to do it.
But, Rita, I just want to make sure that we can get the negotiation and the contract in place before the change in court and council. I couldn't remember that.
Alvin, do you expect to go somewhere?
I hope not, but you never know. The voters will decide.
We don't know.
That's right.
So I like to come and change the court council.
So.
Well, one thing, which, you know, we can talk about this all day, but there's a lot of joint projects out there that we've talked about, the mayor and I. And it was agreed amongst us and the emergency service people and those that this is the top project above all else, number one. And I don't know what the, other people think, but if you talk to the emergency service people and the comments made, this is number one. We're looking at $12.5 million. We know what's going to cost, and we can finance it or we can pay up front, but financing should not be and will not be an issue, I don't think.
Can you talk about decision points that have to be made prior to the RFP as opposed to decision points that get to be made after the RFP? What will be required of these bodies in order to move forward?
I think you're doing a lot of it now on some of the decision points, but the key one is to, and vendors are going to ask this, is to know what your funding mechanisms are, so at this point when the negotiations is done, you know how you're going to pay for it. So I think that's the key. We've asked vendors many times, give us options, tell us what it costs outright, tell us what it costs to lease it, public-private partnerships, what would be a yearly payment if we sit there and pay you across the 15 years to take care of the whole thing. Vendors are very open to options today. But I think your key point is between here where we're getting ready to start and right here that you've identified the funding source so you can move forward. We talked about the nines and all that. I'm gonna look at, just from listening to people, this probably needs to be reduced to 12 to probably 15 months instead of 18 to 24, just from the conversations I've heard. So what's that mean? It means you're spending $12 million quicker because you're spending it in 12 to 15 months instead of 18 to 24. That's important. So if those decisions are made, we got to look at that as a key piece in this as well.
You set this up as a two-option system. Is that an option that you decide before you issue the RFP, or is that an
the funding mechanisms?
No, for the shared core or the non-shared core.
So, in the RFP, we will sit there and say, vendors, tell us what it takes for this county to take, and city to take care of themselves. And you're gonna see a bottom line cost. And then we're gonna say, okay, these other resources are available. If we share those resources, now what's the bottom line cost? Not only on paying for the radio system, but maintaining the radio system. So those really are your two options we would ask for in the specification, and you're gonna see two different bottom line prices.
Not necessary, in other words, everybody choose one of those and bid only that.
You guys may make a decision, and I'm sure there'll be lots of discussion between now and this. I want to be on my own, but I still want to be connected to those guys, because public safety needs that. Or you may make the decision after you see all the pricing that says, I want to share the core. So I would encourage you to have the discussions, but wait till that RFP's done, and then you're going to be able to make very informed decisions based on technology and the bottom line price.
When will you put, in the RFP, will it be 18 months or will it be 12, or will you negotiate that after you choose a vendor?
Well, you could do both.
Well,
so,
on some things, the tighter you make it, the more the cost.
It shouldn't.
Well,
in fact, I mean, a vendor would rather be paid that $12 million
well, he's
in
got
12
to do the
months
work
than 2
quicker.
years.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't expect the cost to go up because I'm asking them to do it quicker. If it's a priority to the city and the county, we would sit there and say, we gotta have this done in 12 months, and if you sign up for it, 12 months and 1 day, we're gonna start enforcing penalties because you said you could do it. And it would be that important to the city and the county.
Well, we do that on a lot of bids, so that's the reason I asked the question.
Yes, sir. So if I'm a vendor, and I've worked for both vendors, I'd rather have that 12.6 in a year than spread out over 2 from a financial standpoint. So I don't see them raising the price because you're asking them to do it quicker. You're asking them to do it quicker because you have a need to do that we've identified in the city and the county.
Any further questions from anybody? We thank you for your...
And we appreciate the opportunity and look forward to serving you guys throughout this process. So thank you very much.
George Schoenhouse.
Well, and I also knew that this was going to take a while and have a lot of questions. And if anybody doesn't want to discuss the other two, I'm okay with that. We'll get back together sometime. But if we've got a minute, I can.
Something strong.
Thank you. She's got it.
Thank you, sir. I think that's where the judge went.
Thank you.
The judge went to get a couple of.
I know they're going to expand the building. I don't know if they're going to buy a lot 38, but he did say that they're going to put it up there.
Before you came.
Teresa's home fixing chili. I told her it probably wouldn't be that long, but
I'm hungry.
I didn't eat.
Well, sure sounds good.
Yeah, buddy.
Fried pork chops sound good.
That's a grilled one. Kirby's got those standing rib roast on sale.
Oh, do they really?
Ribeye roast, $7.99 a pound.
This is way out of the weird, isn't it?
It's already
I guess
sold.
It's
already sold.
I guess it comes off Barclay, right? Weird.
Jack Connor is with us tonight. Jack has done all of the legwork on Langer and Business Park, understands it probably better than anyone else. So he has put together most of these documents, and he'll help me explain when I stumble over various facts and where we are. We want to show you what is currently available in Langer Business Park. We want to establish the fact that we're quickly getting close to running out of enough land to really do aggressive economic development and bring in the jobs. You know, on our side of the street, our property taxes probably amount to less than 8% of our revenue. Over 90% of our revenues are occupational taxes, so jobs are essential to what we do. The business model is part of that story. You can see some of the great progress that's been made over time. Of course, BCTC, we've all visited there. Some of us may have visited Country Boy. It's possible. And the current configuration that we have, the street that runs down by Country Boy is slated in the future to come. Those cul-de-sacs will extend all the way down to a new through road. The property in the upper left-hand corner is very difficult to use because of its topography and has not been useful to us. We've got a bunch of
Stuff that you see hashed there.
the stuff that's hashed is actually phase 2 that we propose. Phases 1, 2, 3. If you'll notice, outlined in blue is what we live with today as phase 1 of the business park. When you drive in, that's pretty much what you see. Phase 2 will include a new road. As you've driven out to the business park, you've seen the new entrance stubbed in already on Sandiana Pike. And that road will go all the way across the business park and come out on Cherry Blossom right across from where Toyota space. So it gives us a much greater presence for the business park directly on Cherry Blossom across from Toyota. About 157 acres in there. Of course, roads and infrastructure will be deducted from that total. Phase 3 of the business park is the part in red down here. Last night, the city council completed the purchase of the top pink 5-acre tract from the Joe Ellis. We completed that purchase last night. You've heard us refer to the parcels that Toyota is contributing as part of the incentive package. And those they're donating 3 parcels, 3 deeds that cover 4 parcels. And those are the 3 at the bottom of the red area. And also at the top.
It's 3, but it's 4. It's 53, but it's 4. 3, but it's 4, yeah. They treat 2 of them as one.
So those are the properties that we're being used to Toyota. We're certain deed restrictions on it that we need to either, to be able to lift those deed restrictions. When former Governor and Congressman Scotty Basler owned the farm, this is pre-Toyota, it had a zone condition attached to it that all the lots had to be used for single-family dwelling zoning. So until we can lift that deed restriction, it's going to be difficult to use it for an industrial park. As Toyota works with us, we're doing the deeds now. When we get those in our name, we complete a couple of the other purchases that we think we can get done. We will probably file suit to have the deed restrictions lifted and see if we can be successful with that. It is our hope that it is our intention to put together enough of the pieces that we need to buy so that we can square off a project properly and then engineer and build as much as we can in one fell swoop. That's the way we'll do it in the most cost-effective way. So we think that we're working on the property purchases now, utilizing the $1 billion that Toyota contributed to the business park transaction. That was part of what we did with City Indiana. And that's the money that the council committed to do last night. We will continue to try to acquire property both within phases 2 and 3. As long as we can, you know, that's an ongoing process with us. And then we do have some, we're beginning to get engineering drawings on what this expansion technically will look like. Yeah, this shows more what the schematic will look like once we do. If indeed we can acquire, utilize all the property in the Basler farm, then that long cul-de-sac would be involved. If we're delayed on that, because we need to move forward with the biggest portion of the project, we can't run that long. If we cannot get all the deed restrictions lifted on the Basler farm, then we'll still build that cul-de-sac partway down and save the rest for future development. We expect over on the Cherry Blossom entrance that to be a significant entrance, not overly done, but we like for the general public and the business traffic to understand that you arrive someplace that's a little bit different. This is a business park, place that's special. Then we would like to also upgrade the new entrance that we'll have over on Cynthia Pike and upgrade to the existing kind of plain Jane entrance later. So we just wanted you all to get a feel for exactly what this project is, where we are. There'll be a lot more details to follow. We have expressed to the judge and publicly, and a number of you, we have had a chance to talk. We hope that this expansion of the business park can be done as a joint city-county project. We each share in the occupational revenue that comes from every job there. And we hope it's an appropriate conversation to have. And either I or Jack would be glad to answer any questions. We can go into more detail, but that's probably you want to talk about the next slide, which is cost estimate. Well, let me do it. Not yet.
Too late, I'm on that page. Might as well get with it, I'm on that page.
It's not even really an estimate, it's from our HDR, but you have to understand, we're not finished with acquisition. As an example, we have discovered already that we think instead of doing a force main, we could be down to the detention pond. As you can see, we might be able to do gravity flow, which means that's going to cut the cost. We know we have in there $1 million from the Corps of Engineers, and that is only an estimate because we know if you go to the floodplain, there you go, we know
safeguard what we can just through negotiations and hope that we don't have to resort to condemnation, and if we do, then we'll have a totally different set of conversations. But at this point, all we're doing are negotiations, I think that's the friendly at this point. Check with the key details that, I really did a 30,000, but I think the numbers are there.
It's 28 acres of demand supply, which you don't see. We have 159. The undevelopable land is just that, specifically up on the north side of the Never. The argument difference is 20 to 30 feet. I haven't located a manufacturer that wants 2 or 3 stores yet, so that presents some real challenges to us. I think the question was asked, council, perhaps it was not a council, but somebody asked, where does this take us? It takes me through my lifetime. We've done, we sold about 100 acres, we've generated about $2.3 million in land sales. I try to figure out job creation, new job creation, not existing, because our priority is to expand and retain what we have. It's about 380 jobs new. We're going to continue that. Capital investments in the neighborhood of $24 million plus or minus. I think that phase 2 and phase 3 gives us exactly what we need to carry us through, because, and I'll finish up on this, Georgetown Industrial Park has 45 acres. I've got 2 clients looking at that. Delaware Plain Industrial Park has 0 land. There's a 20-acre package that's not for sale. That is in terms of the industrial park with the infrastructure side. This is it. So I think that's why this is such a high priority for us and for our industry.
Jack, can you kind of tell us, and I don't want to be specific because I know there's confidentiality agreements, but what kind of industries are looking, or what we're trying to attract? I know when the initial business park was designed, there were certain types of businesses we were trying to get in. Can you just reiterate what your marketing strategy and who you're trying to get?
Our marketing strategy is to work off of this 8 million square feet thing across the street. That's literally it is. We are the location. We are. I mean, the mayor talks about country boy, we located country boy. It is the wow factor because it's something different than manufacturing. The overwhelming majority of clients that we have had and continue to have are existing clients who want to expand. That's our bread and butter. YSBS was a location. Country boy was a location. Orbis was a location. Very few and far between. We're so fortunate to be where we are because of the labor pool, because we know we have a workforce development issue. So we pull off of that thing. The real critical component to BP1 is the design criteria, not so much what's allowable, not. We don't allow warehouse distribution. Prime example. If you had a 500,000 square foot warehouse distribution project with 10 jobs, makes no sense to us from a performance perspective. But what we want to be able to do is have higher quality design criteria, and that kind of leads us back to what's allowable or not. There's 3 pages of what's good, what's not good. A daycare center is not an allowable use, but it is as an ancillary use in BP1 to the business park. That kind of explains it. I mean, I could go off on these tangents for hours. Thank you, Mayor. And I could.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Jack has the ability to provide you with more maps and you can possibly digest. But that's a good feature. That's not a complaint, Jack. That's the, so later, as we discuss this project, and we come back to you with specific proposals about potential local agreement, we want to have a visual in mind. Any other questions on Wayne's on this? And I'm sure the subject everybody really wants to hear tonight. All members smile. If you would click me over one more, or several more. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking with the board about the city's issue with OWASH reserve. And the city's issue with the necessity, we think, of extending the Alexis Way to solve some very severe problems that we have in our community. I found this map really helpful to me to understand some of our current circumstances. When a representative of Lexington, Bluegrass area realtors, I think is what OWASH stands for, when they spoke chamber recently, they used this map, which is kind of interesting. It shows how built out the subdivisions around Georgetown are, with red being completely built out, dark orange being nearly built out. And you can see that as we look around what have been the typical growth areas of Georgetown, they're getting built out. And when we look at the largest area of yellow on the map, there's some green here and there, but the largest area of proposed development for our county right now, this is in the city, but this is the largest for Scott County, is along Old Oxford Road. That's right. There are currently, if any of you have driven Old Oxford Road lately, you can't drive it and stay in one lane and stay on the road. It's in pretty poor condition. If you drive out there and take the time and look at all the new subdivisions and all the new houses that are along that corridor, and then envision 1,500 more homes that are already planted and approved along that corridor. What was formerly a substandard county road is now a substandard city street, where all of our future growth is planted to occur. It's just a dangerous road, and for me, it is the perfect example of, if we're going to wear the mantle of the fastest growing county in Kentucky, and probably the fastest growing city in Kentucky, we have certain responsibilities. And where we have allowed through our various processes, planning, zoning, city government, county government, all of us have allowed certain development patterns to occur, we've got a responsibility to provide adequate infrastructure. And today, Old Oxford Road is not. And, so we commissioned an engineering study just to see what we were talking about. They looked at the road to accomplish two things. Not so much a widening, and I've characterized it as a widening, and I think that scared people. It's more of a rebuild of a two-lane road. And we intend for it to stay a two-lane road. But it needs to be rebuilt in a modern configuration where you don't drive off the shoulder on either side. We also think that, or the engineers think it is dangerous where the road is very much like a roller coaster. And in these engineering study documents you've got, they look at taking the tops off of some of the hills, filling in some of the valleys, so our resulting road is a more gently undulating road in a two-lane configuration that would simply be a lot safer for all of our residents and in our highest growth area. We also think that if we're going to, if as we consider the necessity to rebuild Old Oxford Road, there's all kinds of pretty pictures from the engineering study. But we also have recognized that Old Oxford is never going to work well until we give it a relief route. Because right now, if you're on Old Oxford Road, you have to come all the way in to the traffic congestion area into the V, and then go back out. So structurally, we've got a mess on our hands. We think if we extend Lexus Way by 0.8 of a mile from Cherry Blossom down to Old Oxford.
Now, why I keep stopping on that bottom line?
It's turning that way. That's about 0.8 of a mile, and Lexus Way is working beautifully as a new road that goes from Champion to I-75 down to Cherry Blossom. A lot of pressure points. We think that if we can get this road built down to Old Oxford, and all of the volume of traffic on Old Oxford would have the option of going to Lexus Way, where they can then access Cherry Blossom or I-75, and largely reduce our traffic problem there at the V. these two necessary public projects that I think will allow us to fulfill the promise we've made to people about adequate roads and infrastructure, will really help fill that need. And we've been looking at it, and you know it's an issue. I more just wanted to introduce the problem here. At some point in the future, I'd like to discuss the possibility of possibly a financial arrangement. It's premature to do that, certainly premature to have a conflict. But did want to show you why we thought this was a real priority for the city, and that it can have an impact on county services as well. So, my mistake was, I got all excited about this and let it go on the agenda before I had a chance to talk to the judge and read any real detail about it. So, this goes under the category of planting a seed, and if I got out in front of the judge or getting mad,
Mayor, I'm sure you remember, I know Marvin was on city council at that time, and David Lusby was as well. The city, with the help of a grant from the state, did a traffic study in this area. You all should have a copy of it. I'm sure Andrew reads it at night. And one of the things is this was a proposed solution to this issue. Now, this road, I believe, ran all the way over to 460. You all have it ending at Old Oxford, is that correct?
That's just a cost consideration.
Okay,
I'm
you know,
just trying to
that's
relieve
fine.
the traffic pressure, and was, eventually, I think that would make sense.
Mhm.
But for now, it was more than I can bite off.
Mhm. Well, that was what, at that time, the traffic folks that did the study suggested as a solution to this issue. At that time, there's 11,000 trips on Connector Road daily. That's probably 10 years ago. It's probably around 15 to 20 now. And there was an issue by Applebee's trying to figure out how to turn left off of that Oxford Road. And so this may be a solution, as well as you know, a possibility with more commercial being built around Cherry Blossom that's going to impact Connector Road as well. And, you know, I think this is something that had been talked about a long time ago that might need to see fruition. So.
But it both lets us catch up, I think, with commitments we made, and lets us leapfrog a little bit.
Get ahead of ourselves.
And get ahead with the hydraulics and the traffic. So, and those are not inexpensive projects either. The original engineering estimate, since we're talking about on Old Oxford, was as much as $4 million. That could be value engineered back. I don't know that, you know, Court Council can discuss pipelines on that road, or if that would be dangerous. They're engineered in now. So that $4 million, I think, is the highest side of that problem. An extension of Texas Way, we have not engineered, but just using engineers' estimates, they think that might be a $2 million extension.
Is that something that you will seek to try to get into the 7-year road plan to go that direction?
You know, great question, Chad. And I think we've got to go at this several different ways. I think the need for Old Oxford to be repaired and Lexus Way extended, those needs are great enough and immediate enough to where I don't know if we can wait for a 6-year road. I truly think these might be more immediate. I don't want us to pay for things that we don't have to, but I think these are immediate. The Lexus Way, this connector road, the Lexus Way extension has already gotten some traction. I know that the developers of Pleasant Valley had single-family lots already approved for the back of Pleasant Valley. When we announced our intentions to build a road through what would be their subdivision, and they're now in the process of planning and zoning of changing their proposed plan something that will allow for our road right of way. And then that zone change will come to the council as well. I think council's got a couple of controversial zone changes that they'll get to say grace over in the next month or two. And one of them will involve our effort to get Alexis split. So that's, I just wanted to plant a seed with you all that we share, our shared highest growth area is absolutely substandard road today. And I think it's something we have to fix. I'd like you all just be aware of it and go look at it. And that was about as far as I went.
You finished?
Judge, he's finished.
We adjourn.